wanted to return to the Australian National Audit Office's report on WestConnex. We've talked about it a bit before. Just wondering where you're at with it. Is it something that there's been discussions on, some lessons learnt, reflections on, or is it like that it's gathering dust on the bookshelf and you think, well, we escaped that bullet? Like, where's it sit for you?
No, we're working. I think we accepted the recommendation that was made. I'll ask Ms Leeming and Mr Pittar to come to the table and give you an update on where we're at. But we certainly, in accepting the recommendation, are factoring in some of those issues ANA raised.
Senator, just before my colleagues start, we've taken the findings of the audit report very seriously, and we did appear before the JCPAA, and at that hearing I outlined how we've taken on board the feedback from the ANAO in consideration of the Sunshine Coast Airport extension loan, including the structure of the term sheet in terms of the way we've got legal and other advice early, but I might ask Mr Pittar to take you through.
You've adopted the recommendations, but considering it was quite extraordinary what played out and what the ANAO found, like the fact that Alan's Linklater is brought in to give advice, and then you also have the AECOM brought in to give financial advice. Both groupings that are heavily involved with WestConnex already for many years. I think it's what's still needed is for the public to understand how it ever got to that point. So it's not sort of like just after the fact. So that's what I'd actually like to ask the questions on, please. So when the government needed advice on the terms of the $2 billion loan to the New South Wales government for WestConnex, first off, I just was interested why in the first instance was it outsourced to the private sector? Why was that decision taken?
Well, the department, as a matter of course, seeks expert legal, commercial and technical advice from advisory firms who are on our panel.
Okay.
And we regularly go to the market to seek specialist advice.
So you've got a lot of experience in doing that. So that's why I was wondering that, considering Alan's Linklater, which is the company selected to provide advice on the terms of the $2 billion loans, promoted the deal as a new model for public-private partnerships in Australia and, to further quote from them, support private sector debt co-funding and provide a platform for future private sector equity investment. I mean, what it sounds like is that the $2 billion of public funds were being used to entice private lenders into funding WestConnex construction, as it had been difficult for the government to raise finance for the project. So maybe just starting off, do we all agree that you were having trouble, or the government knew they were going to have trouble raising finance for the project, and then we can go back to why Alan's Linklater, considering they were so involved with this project, and then you get them in to apparently give independent advice?
I think I wouldn't want to conflate the two issues, Senator.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, I'll put over to you, however you want to answer it.
So I think the first issue is the issue of the concessional loan, and certainly in discussions and negotiations with the New South Wales government made it clear that the project wouldn't be able to proceed without financial support from the Commonwealth government.
And I think the critical thing is, in terms of not being proceeding, it's bringing it forward is the crucial issue. The concessional loan, as we've discussed previously, was not about the overall project viability, it was about the timing. The New South Wales government original proposal was for stage 1 to be undertaken and then stage 2 to follow, following consideration of other funding options and financing options. What the concessional loan was to do was to enable it to be brought forward by 2 years to enable stage 1 and 2 to operate in parallel effectively, or as much as possible. So just want to be clear on that in terms of what Mr Tomlin's taking you through.
So can I just clarify, do you mean by that it's accurate that the public loan was necessary because investors and lenders were initially not forthcoming in their support for WestConnex, and therefore that it was packaged up in this way?
Certainly in terms of bringing it forward to the timetable to have stage 2 under construction now, that would not have been possible without the concessional loan. That was the advice from New South Wales, because at that stage, without the further work being done on revenue streams that would have enabled the financing by the commercial banks, and also the New South Wales government at that time was looking at a staged build and sell strategy to enable the private sector to see the revenue streams without government support. So essentially the concessional loan happening as it did was designed to obviate some of those lender risks, not a comment on the overall financeability of the project.
Okay, so thanks. So I'm particularly keen to understand why that company was chosen, considering it was just so involved with the project. That's what's always seemed extraordinary about this.
I might defer to Mr Pittard to go through the details of, if we have them with us, otherwise we'll need to take it on notice.
Thank you, Mr Tomlin. Roland Pittard, General Manager of the Major Infrastructure Projects Office. Senator, I think as Mr Tomlin said earlier, we have a panel of providers and we draw on the panel of providers as the, depending on the expertise that we need from the private sector, that can go to issues around financing, issues around legal, and issues around engineering and technical aspects. I don't have the details as to specifically why that firm was chosen, so we may need to take that on notice compared to other panel providers that we may have had on our panel of providers at the time.
So let's move on to ACOM. They were brought in to assess the financial risk for the proposed loan. I understand that's correct?
I'd need to check. I would have thought AECOM...
I thought they were your choice. I thought you were the ones who chose ACOM.
Again, it's a couple of years ago now. I'd need to check on those details, Senator. But there's absolutely nothing unusual with us selecting providers based on their technical expertise. Companies are also able to structure arrangements around any potential conflicts of interest that they may be perceived to have if they're advising on other parts of the equation. But that would certainly be something that we would be very keen to avoid in engaging a company where there may be perceived conflicts of interest.
But it looks as though they had expertise in other areas, which I'm surprised that that hasn't been mentioned. Like that there's publicly available evidence that they had provided false and misleading traffic projections for other tollways, and that's not me saying it. The allegations led to the company paying out nearly $500 million to settle negligence class actions for its works on the Brisbane motorway. So this is where it just seems so surprising. They're so involved in the WestConnex and they've got a shady history. And there's also the other one about the allegations, including New York Supreme Court judgment, that ACOM had been party to an undisclosed scheme of success fees. So, I mean, this should be front of mind, surely, when you come to estimates?
I could also add that I'm not going to comment on the issues around that particular company, but I can add that we also brought in other consultants in relation to traffic modelling. We brought in consultants internationally to assist with modelling. Robert Bain from the United Kingdom, who's an internationally renowned traffic modeller, to assist us with the work around WestConnex. So we went to a number of sources in order to spread our risks, in order to spread the nature of advice that we got on that project on WestConnex.
The Senator came back. I won't comment on the specific instances you've outlined. I'm not familiar with them, but certainly our experience with AECOM has been, on the whole, very positive in terms of the work they've done for us and and state governments in Australia.
Seriously, Mr. Murdoch, are you saying that you're Secretary of the Department, that you weren't aware of ACOM's history? Like, forget about New York. Fair enough, maybe you don't know about that, although I'm surprised at that. But like the tollway in Brisbane, I mean, that was just in the papers so often. It was reported. Surely you must look at this background.
We do, and we look closely at it. And I think, as Mr. Pitt has indicated, we use a range of consultants to provide advice. But what I was saying to you is that the company has done a series of work over many years for the Commonwealth, and we found that work to be satisfactory.
And you seriously were not aware that they had given incorrect figures for the, and they paid the fine, incorrect figures for the Brisbane motorway project, and they were then nearly $500 million to settle negligence class actions.
I'm aware of the issues with the Brisbane project. However, what I'm saying to you is you basically reference that why would we have chosen that firm. We choose that firm for a range of tasks. Advice on traffic forecasts, we sought other firms to assist us with as well. So it's not simply a case of the Brisbane experiencing ruling them out for other work. On the whole, we found them a company that we're very happy to work with.
I think, Senator, we could come back on notice on the exact nature of the advice that we sought from each firm and the process we went through to engage each firm.
Okay, I'd appreciate if you could take it on notice. Just staying with the report but moving on, also in the ANA report, they found that their analysts found a note from your department, from the department's legal advisors, that it was apparent that, and I quote, "It was the WestConnex delivery agency's intent that the loan was to be a concessional loan affording minimal rights to the Australian government." What was meant by that?
The loan was a concessional loan. The other feature of the loan, Senator, was that it was subordinate to senior debt. The key point of interest for the Commonwealth was to ensure that the subordinate debt was repaid to the Commonwealth. So the key features that the Commonwealth was interested in was around the loan being repaid. Those measures were ensured and those arrangements are currently in place.
And in fact, Senator, the ANA report concluded that in respect to the concessional loan arrangements, that the Commonwealth's interests had been adequately protected, especially in relation to the risk of the loan not being repaid. It found that we'd taken all relevant steps to ensure it would be repaid.
Thanks, but I was just so you're saying that the term affording minimal rights is actually describing a regime that delivers the best way to get the returns on the debt. Is that what you're saying? Like minimal rights sent alarm bells for many people.
Well,
so are you satisfied with that language?
We're comfortable with what the ANAO is saying there, because our interpretation of it in the broad is that it means that the Commonwealth debt, the Commonwealth loan, is subordinate, is subordinate to senior debt, the private sector debt in the loan structure to the project, and the Commonwealth deliberately structured things in that way so that it was subordinate to debt but superior to equity returns in the structure of the project.
So was it structured in that way to help ensure that you're getting the funding flows from the private sector?
It was structured in that way to leverage private sector debt into the vehicle.
Right, even though that's a financial disadvantage for the state, for the Commonwealth?
Well, it's not so much a disadvantage. It was an arrangement that was structured deliberately that way in order to leverage private sector debt into the vehicle, into the special purpose vehicle, WestConnex. or SMC, I should say.
Thank you. Mr Murdoch, I've only got a couple of minutes, so just coming back to some of the issues about the companies that are involved, are you aware that Leighton's, a major contractor with WestConnex, is still under investigation at a domestic and an international level for bribery, and these investigations have been ongoing for 4 years, since 2013?
I'm aware of the allegations, Senator, yes.
And how do you handle that when you have a major project, you're making a decision to take on a company to basically run and deliver that project, and there is this major investigation that could prove very serious? How do you balance that out? How do you work out your decision making?
Well, when we engage consultants, we do look at Leighton's is obviously a multinational Australian company. We look at the probity issues involved. As you say, they are allegations. We're aware of them. The company makes us aware of those issues. At the end of the day, when we select contractors, we select on a whole range of criteria. If they are allegations, we treat the process as ongoing.
So when you say Leighton's makes you aware of it, do they just say we're being investigated, or do they actually tell you the details of what it is and put their case and you make a judgment on that?
I'd have to seek some advice on what occurred in this particular circumstance to what was made available to us or what was made known to us by other parties. I'll take on notice the extent of the knowledge at the time we appointed them.
Thank you, Mr Murdoch. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Senator Rhiannon. Now, Senator Urquhart.